Welcome to the Unscripted Podcast. My name's Corby LaCroix, and the song you're hearing right now is called Great and Mighty One, available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your music. But for now, here's your host and my friend, Aaron Conrad.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Unscripted from my studios in Old Hilliard. And actually, let me just let my guest introduce herself, and we will go from there because this is going to be a really interesting interview. So let me let you introduce yourself. We'll go from there.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you. My name is Preston von Arx, and I am originally from Marion, Indiana. But my husband and I and our two children have lived in Wilson, North Carolina since 1997. The girls were born a year later. I used to practice law, and I now own a senior home care agency where we take care of our clients in their privacy and the comfort of their own home. All
right. There you go. And so I want to paint a picture just in case we just talked about this, in case people, if this doesn't make it up to video. Behind Preston, first of all, she's got a choke shirt on that's in Carolina blue, which is maybe one of my favorite shirts ever. And then to her right, she has an Indiana shirt, and to her left, she has a Michigan shirt. And there's all kinds of sports memorabilia, and we just lost probably half the audience because if there's anyone listening here in Buckeye territory, they're already upset, or a Duke fan. So we've already irritated maybe several people. But all that to say,
Aaron, you need the bottom part of my T-shirt. It says "Choke," the official drink of Duke basketball. It was after one of the games where they were winning and they ended up losing. So I love it.
Right. I do too, and we will. I'm sure we're going to talk Tar Heel basketball and Tar Heel sports here in a few. But again, I think 3 more people just logged off that are Duke fans that listen. So I do have a weird number of Duke fans, and I have to mention behind me on the wall are 2 incredible drawings. Actually, 3. There's a Michael Jordan one also. Those are hand drawn by a guy that actually went to Duke. That's a very good friend of mine and a big listener of our show. So. Yeah, he's incredibly talented. So I got to be careful. I don't want to irritate too much or talk too much about it.
I agree.
So, all right, let me set the stage for everybody. We met, 3 or 4 weeks ago when I did an interview with Sammy Sass, and Sammy, if anybody had not heard that interview, Sammy played with my son against each other from 4th grade all the way through high school. They competed against one another. The family's become a good family friend of ours. And Sammy is staying with you. You are his host home. Just so anybody listening is like, what are we talking about here? That's what we're going to talk about. You are the host home for Sammy Sass. And in getting to know one another, we just decided to come on and do an interview because I think it's fascinating what it even means to be a host home. So why don't you start at the beginning? We have an incredible story that we want to share. And some people may have already heard it on a previous episode. Just 2 or 3 ago, an emergency podcast I did. But all right, why don't we start at the very beginning? What does it mean? How did you even get in the business of being a host home?
Good question. My husband keeps telling me I need to practice to learn to say to the word no. But right. I do not regret this at all. Wilson is home to the Wilson Tobs, which competes in a summer NCAA collegiate baseball league, the Coastal Plain League. And for years, one of my friends has run the host parents part of the summer ball league, and their son and our daughters grew up together, and she's been on me to host a player. And I kept falling back on the rules that we can't because they would be upstairs with our daughters and they cannot share a bathroom. But when we found ourselves having an empty nest in the summer, we thought about it. And in between freshman and sophomore year of college, one of our daughters came back to Wilson and was an athletic training intern for the Tobs. And people kept saying then, why don't you host? And we said, we're hosting our daughter. So we dipped our toes in it that year, went to the games regularly, got to know other host parents. And so we've been doing it since then. This is our 3rd year. And every year the players are different. And it's just, I wouldn't want to do it 12 months out of the year, but we're also not good empty nesters. So it's fun in the summer. But
And
being a host, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Being a host parent, it doesn't involve as much as you would think. You are opening your house up to college age boys who you've never met before. And after about their first week, you don't see them that much because they play 6 or 7 days a week. Their hours are almost the opposite of ours because they travel a lot and they might get home at 2 or 3 in the morning and they're going to bed when we're getting up to go to work a lot of the time. But what little time we get to spend with them, and we do get to know them, we have enjoyed every player.
Mm-hmm. And where, just so geography wise, where is Wilson in North Carolina? It's close to Chapel Hill, correct or no?
Correct. We are east of Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill is exactly an hour and 15 minutes west of here. And we're about 45 minutes east of Raleigh, right off of I-95. And as a bird would fly, we're 90 miles from the coast, but it takes about 2 hours to drive there. So and we're in the flat cotton tobacco part of eastern North Carolina.
Okay. And Wilson, is this a team that plays year round, or is this just in the summer? I assume this is I haven't seen it. Is there a stadium? Is there, what is this usually during the normal year, not in the summer?
Oh, it is a historic Fleming Stadium. It's one of the oldest baseball stadiums, and there's actually a North Carolina baseball museum located there. It's really neat. It's not a new fancy one. It has a lot of tradition. And so during the summer, the top season starts like the last week of May, goes through the end of July, and if they make the playoffs for 2 weeks in August. The rest of the time, there might be smaller college games. The American League plays, that league plays when the Tobs are playing away. They have tournaments. So it's used, I would say, about 10 months or so. It's a big part of this community. There's a lot of fundraising events. There might be games between doctors and lawyers. And
fun.
Yeah, it's just a big part of Wilson.
All right. And so in the summer, it is, and quick question, there's no Tar Heels playing for the Tobs, is there?
There's no what?
Tar Heels playing for the Tobs?
Not this year. I wish there would. All right. I have because they went to the super regionals, right? They weren't playing anywhere at all in our league, but almost on every other team. Now I notice that there's a UNC player that we're playing against. Yep.
Right. And I asked Sammy if Honeycutt was, because he's going to be amazing. So wherever he is, I'd love to see him play. That's Tar Heel talk. Anyway, back to hosting a player. So just so everybody kind of understands what that even looks like. And a lot of times, if I understand it right, the colleges, Division I particularly, will send their players out for the summer to get some additional work, whether it's trying a new position, whether it's sharpening something that maybe they struggled with during the season. So that's why they play summer ball. They're not compensated. Is that correct? Are they compensated to play for these teams?
No, they are not compensated. And as a host parent, we are supposed to provide their food, have food here for breakfast, their drinks, their Gatorade. Every family does it differently. Every player has different wants, and some are very independent. Some want, meat and potatoes when they're home. But they are not paid. And I know in other leagues, both of our players this year, or at least one of them, he played somewhere in Georgia last year. And not only were they not paid, but they had to drive themselves to every game. And it might be a 2 or 3 hour drive. And then so that was a lot of gas. And the Tobs have a bus, and they provide them dinner after every game. And so the community really tries to support them so a lot doesn't have to come out of the player's pocket.
And so I think that leads me to the question about host home. They have to have a host home unless they come from some sort of money where the parents can put up for them to stay in a hotel, which would be an astronomical, or an Airbnb or a summer home rental or something like that. That has to be really hard. So host homes are very, very critical for these players because they're not making any money in the summer. They're doing this to continue to work on their craft. And so how many players have you hosted total over the years?
Oh, it's a revolving door. The first year we hosted was the year that COVID broke out, that March. And so it was a shortened season. There weren't very many teams to play against. We started out with 2 players, and a lot of families who committed to hosting started to get scared, and I do not judge them at all. We had 9. Both of our daughters were home. One was back helping with athletic training, and then we had 5 other Tobs players here.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, because other families were just either having symptoms, catching it, or just getting scared. And then last year, we had 2. This year we started out with 2, and one had to leave for a medical reason. Then Sammy arrived on the heels of that, and now we have inherited a 3rd player who is sleeping on the sectional that I'm sitting on because they all think this is the most comfortable thing in the world, and we don't have another bed for him. We have an air mattress, but he likes this better.
There you go. And so it's essentially almost like leaving the dorm and heading to they're all staying together, hanging out together. That's got to be really cool for the guys because they're not coming from the same teams, right? Like Sammy he's not with 2 teammates from Wright State. No. He's with 2 people he's probably never met before.
Sometimes they do come as teammates, but we have Sammy's from Wright. We have Trey, who's from Delaware State, and now we have Jake, who's from Florida Southern, I think. And every year I ask the players, and we have stayed in touch with our former players.
That's so cool.
In close touch. And every year I always ask them, what was your favorite thing about Wilson? There's not a lot to do here. And they said the friendships they made with the other players, the host families, and cookout. And I don't know if you know what cookout is.
I don't.
It's kind of like a Culver's or Checkers, but it's open until like 4 in-the-morning, and they're hungry. Even if the Tobs feed them, they are starved when they get back. Yeah. So that's sort of the local place to go, in the middle of the night to grab some food. But I think it's mainly the friendships and just meeting and playing with other players from other conferences, other parts of the country. It's really neat to watch. It's
really cool, actually. Because they'll and most of the guys that are playing in these kind of leagues have a future in baseball, most likely. I mean, you never know. I mean, the percentages are so difficult to know, but most of these guys are not playing just because it's another couple of weeks to play. They hope to have bigger dreams beyond their college years in the sport.
Yes, they work hard. And Sammy and our players this year, they wake up about 10:30 or 11. They go directly to the gym. I'm like, do you not want breakfast? Maybe they grab breakfast along the way. They go to the gym. If they have time, they come home, change, and go to the field to either get ready for the home game or to travel. But most of the time it's from the gym to the field and off they go or get ready for a home game. So they're not just here having fun. They are having fun, but they are here to play ball.
Sure. Yeah, and I know that from trying to schedule with Sammy, it was very difficult. And he gave us, even on an off day, air quotes, he had like 2 charity things to do too, which was really neat that the team is doing stuff like that, serving their community. I thought that was very cool. But even then, he had to wedge me in to that time that he barely had. We had to get that in. So do you do their laundry?
Oh, that's so funny. I always ask, now, do you want me to do your laundry? And I think almost all of them, with the exception of one, like, oh, no. My mom made me start doing my laundry when I went to college. So I think that works out better. I do say, by the way, don't you want to strip your beds and bring your towels down and let me at least wash those? And they never take me up on that. I don't go in their room. And so I guess I leave that up to them.
Yeah, well,
They're
you
boys.
are dealing with boys, right?
Yes.
You're dealing with boys, and so
we have 2 daughters, and that's it. So that's a little bit new to me,
Right. And I was just going to say, you do have 2 daughters, but they're also, one of them, I think, is involved in sports. You mentioned, I think, athletic training, right? What do your daughters do?
So they are twins, and yes, and they both went to UNC Chapel Hill, and they both are getting their master's in athletic training at University of Michigan. But that doesn't mean they're always at Michigan. Right now they're doing internships, and in the fall they'll be doing clinical immersions, and then they'll go back for one more semester. But they were soccer players growing up, and they had multiple ACL tears. And one of my sayings is you always have to look for the silver lining. And the silver lining was soccer was no longer in their college career or dreams, but they found their passion, which was athletic training.
That's so cool. And so they're both doing that. How long until they're done? You might have mentioned this. How long until what's the track for them to be finished?
They will graduate next May. Okay. It's a 2-year program. And they keep saying they wish it was 3 or 4 years because they have learned a lot, and they have really enjoyed working with the different teams. And they did that undergrad the last 2 years at Chapel Hill, working just with football. So in Michigan, they're getting exposed to other sports as well. And so it's been really interesting. They get home tomorrow night too.
Oh, that's awesome. So you'll have a full house. And is it ever awkward because you do have 2 daughters and you have all these guys playing baseball guys? Does it ever get awkward having everybody home at once, or is it really almost like a family?
It is like a family, and other friends ask that, like, is it awkward? Or Gabi has been home off and on for the past week or so. Not awkward at all. She stretches out the players. She helps warm them up. I'll never forget when she walked in a week ago from Michigan. It was an off night and we were eating dinner, and she said, "Hello, host brothers." And it's just an immediate bond. It helps that she worked with the Tobs before. And then they stay in touch with them too. Jesse hasn't met either one of them yet. Or either 3 of them, I should say. So we will have a full house tomorrow night, and it'll be crazy.
That's awesome. I know my wife would love that kind of a situation because she loves entertaining. She loves a full house, and she loves sitting around but it doesn't sound like there's a lot of dinners around the table. It sounds like it's more grab and go.
Maybe one night a week. And last night was one, and we started watching the Home Run Derby together.
Oh, nice. Right.
We all were for different people, but we keep a different time schedule than they do somewhat. So they came up and finished watching it. But I like cooking for them. And if you cook, they will come on the nights that they're off.
Right. I bet.
Yeah.
Especially because they're not paid. So a meal they can get at your home is probably better than anything that and costing them additional money. So we've already interviewed Sammy. I'm such a huge fan of Sammy and Jeff and the family. And
Me too.
What's it been like hosting Sammy?
At first, I thought he was really quiet. But again, he arrived, and it was they were halfway through the first half of the season. So there wasn't much of that initial downtime practice week. I love Sammy. He's not quiet at all, and we have great conversations. And I learned a lot about him listening to your podcast, because that was early on when he was staying here. But right from the beginning, the Michigan, Ohio State, and then the UNC Duke, he loves a good competition. We do, so we have a very friendly, fun, poke at each other rivalry.
Yeah.
I will say his eyes lit up when my daughter Gabi was home and asked him, even though he was such a Duke fan, when she comes back with Jesse, they would love to take our players to UNC on a day off and show them around the new training facility, because they are still allowed access. And if they call and ask, and it really is beautiful. And I said, you're never going to get Sammy to UNC. And he said right away, he said, oh, I would love to go. I would love to go. And then I'll drive by Duke on the way home.
That's right. Well, it's 8 miles, right? I mean, it's 8 miles.
Right.
It's, I've made both of those trips myself. And I did tell him, I think either on the podcast or off, he needs to go to the basketball. I mean, he's a basketball, he played basketball. He's a very good basketball player. And so I think he would love, even if you're a Duke fan, I would think you would still love and appreciate and respect the basketball museum if they get a chance to go in, or even the Dean Dome. I mean, I'd love to be in Cameron Indoor just once, to say I've seen it. I mean, it's pretty special whether the rivalry exists or not. It's still, there's so much tradition and history there that it's really, so I imagine he would. Plus, you got to take him to Johnny T-shirt. I told him he needs to hook me up while he's down there. Take him to Johnny T-shirt. Is Sutton still open, or did they close it? I heard it was going to close. It's still open?
Yes. They are still open.
So he's got to go to Sutton's. I mean, he's
time
not
out.
here. There's time out, right? I mean, he's got to go. Yeah, he's got to get the tour. He's just got to go down Franklin Street, and we'll convert him before he leaves.
Yes, right. I agree.
We will convert him before he leaves.
I am not a Duke hater. When UNC plays Duke, I'm going to cheer for UNC. But I always say we doctor at Duke and we pay tuition at UNC. So
that's right. You're right.
Now, around here, people say you can't be that way. And I say, I'm always for UNC when they're playing Duke, but I'm not rooting for Duke to lose every other game.
Right. I think there's a respect. I mean, at the end of the day, they've got great players. They always recruit the same players. That's what's so funny is, a decision here, a decision there. Those kids are going to be wearing a different uniform. And, I think it's plus I'm not sure what's left of the rivalry after the Final Four. You
can't top the end of the season beating them at Coach K's last home game and then the Final Four. It's crazy. And I think
that's gonna
but like you said, to really go and see how close they are geographically makes the rivalry even better.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's Michigan and Ohio State, but they're not right down the road from one another.
No.
It's just so interesting.
And I'm interested to ask this too. I know living in Columbus, I have no skin in the game. I don't really, any of the Big Ten teams. But what I constantly hear from friends that I have in Michigan is that it's a much bigger deal in Ohio than it is in Michigan. Like it's a rivalry. It's a big deal, but I hear a lot that Ohio, like everybody in Columbus kind of makes it much of a bigger deal than the people in Michigan do. They're like, yeah, it's a rivalry game, but they don't like live and die by it. I mean, Columbus is, they live and die here by that game. So I'm curious if that's the same for the Duke Carolina rivalry.
For the Duke, for the Duke. Oh, it's a real rivalry. It's right. For both.
On both sides.
On both sides, I think it's very equal. I thought you were going to ask if Michigan doesn't consider Ohio State a rivalry.
They do. I know they do. They just don't they don't go around putting tape over all the O's in the state of Michigan.
Sammy told me that.
Anyway, okay.
But I do know that from the very first day of practice of college football camp, it always starts out with, what are you doing today to beat Ohio State?
Right.
And that absolutely cannot give them red Gatorade ever. I think it's so funny, those sort of things.
Yeah, and that is fun. Yeah. I mean, it's all fun. I think at least in the triangle, I think, as I understand it, NC State really wants to be rivals with either one of them, and they're both kind of like whatever.
That is sort of the running joke. They always say it's a big rivalry game, and Duke and UNC fans will say NC State is not a rival of ours, but NC State sees it differently.
Right. Well, they just want so badly to win. So, all right, we've offended probably several fans.
It may just be you and me now.
It might just be you and I at this point, but and a few Carolina fans. But what an exciting time to be able to be with these young men as they go through this process to meet, and I'm sure you've seen different personalities, but at the same time, I have a feeling most of the guys still have like a same gene. Like Sammy and I talked about a drive, I think, Maybe not. I don't know. That's interesting. Have you seen the same type of personality thread through all, or have they all been very different?
All but one player we had was a hoot, and you could tell he was finished with baseball. I mean, he was tired, and he was here just to have fun. And his parents were making him play baseball, but in his mind, he had already decided. But everyone else is sort of built from the same cloth, it seems like. I mean, they do want to have, they don't have a lot of time to have fun, but, they're up here gaming a lot late at night. They want to relax and have fun, but they are here to play ball. Mm-hmm. And if it's even playing a different position, just to play ball. And like I said, they get up and work out, and it's very hot and humid here. I know it is everywhere. But they're all determined and committed, and, it's their hope that they can further their career. And, they've been watching the draft, and they know they played with or against players that have been drafted, and that's motivating for them.
Especially at Sammy's age. So I, kept not a close eye, but an occasional glance at the draft too, because kids that were, my son's age, Sammy's age, they're being drafted now. And, it's interesting to see their names even on the draft boards. It's crazy to think. I remember when they were just third, fourth graders. So it's really neat to kind of watch that process. But this is truly a labor of love for you. I was going to say too, I think this is a business trip. To your point, this isn't a vacation for these guys. This is a business trip. It's an extended business trip. Is that fair to say? It
really is. And most of them packed up straight from, especially if they played, in the playoffs and the regionals or super regionals, some of them maybe got to go see their parents a day or two, but most of them came from there directly to here. And then if they stayed the whole season, will probably go directly back to their college.
Back to their campus. Right.
Depending on how long our season lasts. Excuse me?
Do you host their families when they come?
Well... let me tell you another thing about boys. I love boys, but they don't communicate. So,
they do not.
For instance, Sammy's parents were coming. I had no idea. And that day, he's like, "Oh yeah, my mom and dad and little sister are here." I'm like, "Really?"
Right.
I would, but we've run out of room. I've always promised the girls I won't give up their room because that's their room. And the other guest room has 2 players in it. And now we've got one here in what used to be the playroom. It's just there's a pool table, TV, a sectional. So I would host them, but there's no room for them.
Yeah.
But we've had them over. We've, cooked out with them. If they let me know they're here, we'll sit with them at the game this weekend. Last weekend, Jake's parents were here from Florida. Didn't know they were coming till the day they arrived, but really enjoyed them. Jeff and his wife and Maggie were here. That was so much fun. And then this weekend, Trey's family is coming, which he did let me know early on the exact dates.
Nice. Yeah, that's always helpful. I know it would drive my wife crazy if people were just coming and going, but I do have a son and 2 daughters, and so I can appreciate the differences between the two.
And not the daughters are perfect.
No, they're not. They just tend to communicate a little more, maybe too much, but they do tend to communicate quite a bit more than the boys do. It's just like, oh, by the way, I just did this, and it was like a major life decision. Okay, when were we going to discuss this? So, well, I don't know any of the other players you've ever had. I just know the one you have, and I'm a big fan. He knows it. His dad knows it. I'm so glad that he connected us, and I appreciate your time just coming on and giving us kind of a behind the scenes of what it means to be a host parent. I've always been curious. My son didn't ever do the summer ball thing in his couple years in college, and so I've always wondered what that was like for the player and the host family, and now we've had both. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And we love it. I feel for me, it's the same as like when I volunteer in a very selfish way. I feel like I get more out of it than I'm giving to them. And I feel that way about hosting. Again, I wouldn't want them 12 months, but we really love them when they're here. And I love sharing our story.
I'm sorry. I just thought of one more question. Have any of the players that you've hosted made it to that next level? Have they been drafted or anything?
No, not that we've hosted, but a player last year went in the first round that a family friend of ours hosted for 2 years in a row. I have a feeling one of the players we hosted the first year, he's a pitcher. I think next year he will be drafted.
Yeah.
He's at Davidson.
Davidson near Charlotte, Davidson?
Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah.
That's such a small school, but they produce great teams.
They do. Absolutely. It's beautiful. That area is beautiful. We almost moved there.
It sure is.
Well, I'm probably going to get myself in a lot of trouble. Hopefully it is just you and I listening now or talking now.
I'm sure it is.
Because I'm going to say, I think the one of the three in your home has a good chance too. We'll just leave it at that. We won't say names, but one of the three in your house, I think he might have a good chance.
I have a little background on that without naming names if you have time for one more story.
Absolutely, 100%.
This summer, the definition of host mom was changed for me. One of our first players, I assumed it was an athletic injury when he texted me and said, the athletic trainer thinks I need to go to the ER. And so we spent 14 hours here, and then he was transferred to a bigger hospital where he had to have 3 surgeries. It was blood clots in his lower neck and shoulder. And so on the heels of that, while I'm at that hospital, I get a call about, would you host a certain player? And I don't think he'll be there very long because he might even be drafted this year. And I said, well, let me take a deep breath and ask our other player, our initial player that's here. And of course, it was a unanimous yes. So I will be watching and following. Yeah. And his dad will keep me posted for sure.
I'm sure he will. And I don't want to put any pressure on that player at all. No matter what he does, he's going to be successful in life. And so that's really not to put pressure on him and unexpected or, unfair expectation. There's no expectations. I just want to cheer him on, and I want to see him succeed at what he loves to do. That other player that we're talking about. Yeah. So
he who shall remain unnamed.
He shall remain unnamed, even though he's a Duke fan. So your only role, I think, from my perspective, the rest of the time there is to get him down to Franklin Street and, just get him immersed get him washed in the blood of Chapel Hill.
I will.
Maybe he can leave the roots of I don't care. We're joking. He's a wonderful kid. He's a wonderful young man. He's not a kid anymore. He
is a wonderful young man, but it is my goal that all 3 will leave with Carolina blue sportswear of some sort after visiting campus for a day with our girls.
Johnny T-shirt. I'm telling you, they've got everything you need. And,
they do.
Absolutely.
And then some.
They do.
Yep.
I spent way too much. It's pretty much my wife gets the Johnny T-shirt catalogs and pretty much order. I know what I'm going to get for Christmas every year because it's straight out of Johnny T-shirt's catalog. So
but it's easy for us.
It's so easy. I'm the easiest guy in the world to shop for. I really am. So, well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure you and I will be continue to be in touch, and especially this year, we got a really good squad. So I think we may be hanging some laundry again. But I don't want to jinx it. But I don't know who's going to beat Carolina this year. Yeah. I really don't. They're so good.
It's getting exciting already.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of us fans, they do it in Ohio, they do it in Michigan, they do it in Indiana, they do it everywhere. This is our year, but I got a pretty good feeling about this team.
I do too.
So yeah,
especially with Baycott staying and Leakey staying. Gosh. It's exciting.
It is, and honestly, it's going to be the complete opposite of last year, where they had no bench. This year, they're going to have to find minutes for a lot of really talented guys, and so it's going to be fun to watch.
Yes,
it's a great problem to have. Yeah. So, well, best of luck to you. If we ever make it down that way again, I will make sure to get in contact with you. I'd love to meet you, and
we will host you. If it's not during summer baseball, we will host you.
Just don't come in this summer, right? Well, we are going to Outer Banks next summer, and we typically go by way of Chapel Hill, even though it's not necessarily.
Course. It's not on your way though.
It's not. When the kids were younger, it was 8 hours there, and then 3 or 4, the next day. So we'd break up the drive that way. And
that's perfect.
Of course, yeah, we'd get to worship at Chapel Hill.
Yes, God's country, so some people call it.
God's country, absolutely. I call it Mecca, but it's fine. Well, God bless you. Thank you so much for hosting all these young players, making an impact in their lives, and for really, it's an act of service what you all do. Mm-hmm. But it's a huge, I'm sure for each one of those families it means a lot. I know one family that it does mean a lot too, and so thank you. Thank you so much. Nice talking to you. Bye. Right, we'll talk soon. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Unscripted Podcast with your host, Aaron Conrad. Make sure to like, share, follow, and review on your favorite podcast platforms. Also, make sure to check out my song, Great and Mighty One, on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your music. We'll see you next time on Unscripted with Aaron Conrad.